let's talk a bit about the modern micropractice. Now, in my book, one thing that I didn't do, what I realized about putting a book up on Amazon is that anyone in the world can read the first 10 pages of your book without buying it. Have you ever seen that on Amazon where you can click through? And so what I really wanted with the book was kind of for the integrative and functional medicine group, but the reason why I made the book is I wanted to create something that I could put in a doctor's hand where it would be the biggest potential chance that they would want to do something like this. And so in the first 10 pages, which is the sort of the synopsis, I didn't use the word integrative and I didn't use the word functional on purpose, because I know that there are doctors even in this room who I was speaking to in the break who, for them, they cannot be associated with integrative, right? They have an idea of what that is, and that's not them, and they don't want to go back to their hematology group and say that I'm doing integrative because they'll be looked at like the weird child, right? And so, but that's true. So, you know, there's an opportunity for you to call this whatever you want. I think community micropractice sounds nice. Very, you know, who doesn't want community? And micropractice is a concept that makes you, step back, what is that? So I talked about the opportunity to create community micropractices, modern micropractice, whatever. You know, you don't have to bill it whatever you want. Like, there's going to be different in different countries how people think about these different words. So just work with that and don't, force yourself into communicating something you're not comfortable with or otherwise, because it's all kind of there's subtle differences. So, the modern micropractice, low overhead, digitally advanced, focused on a foundation for a larger practice vision, housed in a non-traditional medical environment. So let's talk about this for a minute. So what I started to see was that there were practices that were looking very different from medical practices. I had seen, when I was a sales rep, how many practitioners, they see the integrative center with all the different providers working together and they think, that's what I want, I'm going to go and do it. And then what happens is you as the physician, clinician, entrepreneur, because I've seen actually those kind of practices start by non-doctors where they have doctors in the mix, depending on what state in America that's legal or not illegal. But what they saw is that suddenly they had 4 jobs in one. They were the clinician, they were the business owner, entrepreneur, they were the HR manager, they were the accountant, they were the, all of these things in one, and having to learn 4 new skill sets at once. It all seems like a great idea to have all of the practitioners in one space, rent them all out as independent contractors, have some social cohesion. Oh, we're going to have events once a week and everyone's going to be friends and it's going to work well, until you actually get people in a room together and you realize that takes some time and effort. And that's probably the work, each one of those roles is the work of a serious, experienced person. And one person who's never been in private practice trying to do all of those things is a recipe for disaster. And so what you ended up with is a lot of wreckage in the early years where people would get a bunch of money, start this center with the right intentions, and then realize that the overhead was massive and they had no idea about how to run this kind of business. And so what we recommend is, what I saw is I would ask practitioners, how did you start? What happened? And I always found the thing that was always there was one time where they learnt their trade, either the clinical trade or the business owner trade or the accountant trade or whatever other parts they had to play. They learned their trade in an environment where they could mess up and it wouldn't mean the end, right? Where they couldn't end themselves or end their career by only having 6 months left of runway and running out of money too quickly because they didn't bring in patients fast enough as they thought, all that kind of thing. So low overhead is a really important piece. And so many practices, it was just they would start by renting a room. But then I was like, wow, telemedicine's interesting. I just heard my friend Stephanie Daniel, who's functional medicine San Francisco, where she had San Francisco is the most expensive real estate in the whole of America. And so she went from 5 days a week in practice, commuting every day to see patients, to 1 day a week in physical practice, just seeing new people, and then the other 4 days, chilling at home, doing it all on telemedicine, possibly not even wearing pants. Right? Because why not? Because, they're only seeing your face, and people liked it. They didn't have to go and find parking near her building. They didn't have to climb up the stairs and, wait and hope that it wasn't going to be late. They just had a good interaction with the technology. So I was like, wow, you don't need as much stuff as you think you need anymore. You don't need as much physical space. And And what are the biggest two costs of overhead? Is the space and the people, right? The space and the people. So then I see Parsley Health with no front desk person. Literally, it's her in a room, in a co-working space with no one else, just a laptop. That's the overhead. $750 a month for the little room, and her as a startup trying to get members at $150 a month, right? If you had gone and started that as a big practice with even the practices she has now, which is 2 health coaches, the nurse case manager, 2 rooms, and this, a CTO and all the things that her business has now, how much quicker would she have had to build the base to be able to make sure that she didn't run out of money? But she was working as a startup, and she just knew that she needed to keep the costs as low as possible, and so it was just her with a laptop in a tiny room. And now it's grown, now it's in 3 cities, but they're all micro practices. Digitally advanced. There are so many things where there are now all these technologies, like we're going to talk about the different technologies this afternoon, but you don't have all the same cool stuff that we have in America at the moment here in Australia, but I'm going to hopefully share as many of the technologies that I see that are international for all of you, but there are just so many things that don't need to be done by a person, and that you're actually slowing it down. And one of the things when Penny asked me, would I feel comfortable in having Metagenics or one of these other companies sponsor today, we've never had supplement sponsors. I asked, I said, can we find a technology that's Australian, that's improving the efficiency of the delivery of care? And so thank you, Victus, and thank you, Pauline, for sponsoring it, because when we speak about this later, whether or not you guys all choose to use Victus is your choice. But what I really want you to get in the mindset of is thinking about what are the things are you paying people to do now that could be done with automation? And what are the things that don't need to, are really inefficiently done in person, that you're only doing in person just because it's kind of always been done that way, bearing in mind that this is like a 20-year industry, so always it doesn't mean anything, right? It just is. People were trying to make it at the beginning and just muddled their way through it, but we don't have to do that anymore. We can learn and see what's going on. Okay, focus on the foundation for a larger practice vision. I know the vision of the big integrated center is beautiful, and it pulls at our heartstrings because we'd like to see, it's kind of like the village health model that we'd love to see, right? We'd love to see all the practitioners working together. Once you realize that people need different things, you'd like to have it all under one roof, make it easy for people. If you get this right, the foundation for the larger practice vision, and you get this structure right, you can do whatever you want. You can have whatever vision. You can implement whatever vision. The thing I'm going to tell you here today is what we're going to learn by the end of this session. We're going to learn what is the most efficient way to have a very predictable new patient acquisition strategy. Because at the end of the day, if you can acquire the interest of more people into your practice than you can deal with, you're in good shape. Because you can then decide to just have a big waiting list, or to do more community stuff, or to hire another doctor. All of these things become an option to you. Whereas if you don't have the new patient acquisition coming in, you have very few options because you can't do it. And if you're a practitioner that dreams of like having a practice and you're not a doctor, and you'd like to build a practice and have doctors working there, if you can nail the new patient acquisition, like how to bring in people consistently, you can then, you have a lot of freedom to like hire a doctor into your practice. And we're seeing this in America, the beginning signs of it. In some states it's illegal for a medical practice not to be owned by a doctor, but I've seen at least a dozen clinics where either a chiropractor or a health coach or a nutritionist or whatever is so awesome at new patient acquisition that they know how to get people into the practice that they hired a doctor. There's a Kimberly Shirk, who's in the Practice Accelerator, is a PA, a physician's assistant. She started a direct primary care practice at $60 a month for the general population, for basically like direct primary care pediatrics. And then she has a functional medicine center, the high touch services that are all cash. Well, it's all cash, but like the higher cost services go on off that. And she's hired the doctors to do that. And she's hired the doctor to do the direct primary care, and she owns the whole thing. And she's a physician's assistant. So it's like, what are the skills, the entrepreneurial skills? When I realized I didn't want to be an investment banker and realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I learned sales. I wanted to be a supplement rep. I went from being on the floor of the trading floor of the biggest bank in the world to selling homeopathy at the back of my car. Because I knew that was like an important step in learning how to build a business, was to, engage with the community that I wanted to share. National medical environment. So, from what I said earlier, you can get the idea that there's a potential thing going on that the more medical the environment is, the less efficient it is for health creation. And so, what I want you to think about is, if you're planning your clinic now, where are places where community already exists, right? So, we had an interview with, when my book came out, with the chief strategy officer for CrossFit. So in CrossFit, you have people who are dedicated to health creation, signing up and paying a monthly fee to do really hardcore workouts, eat paleo, and have a good community in there. I would argue there's more health being created in a CrossFit than in hospitals, because these guys are, actually doing the things that create health every day. They're in a community environment. The reason why CrossFit works is because you get egged on to do more than you would do individually, because you've got a group of people working together. They have a culture of health with food around it. That's why the paleo movement really took off, because there were churches of paleo in every town called CrossFit. And then, you have the community support, the exercise, all happening together. So think about, where are some non-traditional medical environments where you could literally start a practice and plug in. We've spoken about examples with businesses. And businesses is different in America, because businesses are paying a lot of the health costs of their employees. So, it's not unlikely now that you could have a clinic inside a corporate campus where they're paying $50 a month, $100 a month per employee for you to be the on-site doctor. I don't know if that would work here, but I'd imagine that, there is some potential, especially when you're dealing with executives or others. But just think about, where should you actually have your practice? And it probably shouldn't be in a medical center where everything's super depressing. All right, so we're going to talk about the sort of 5 steps to the modern micropractice, and we're going to start in the middle, we're going to move out. So the first thing that we have to work out is the practice offering. Now, I kind of like this analogy, because it's almost like looking down the gut tube in a certain way, and we have to get the gut tube right. We have to get the middle bit right. And this is what we're going to talk about first. So it's your practice offering. So, having a structure to build function, empowering the patient. This is the basis of integrated medicine and functional medicine and naturopathic medicine, is patient empowerment, empowering the patient to be part of it, using the power of peers, and we'll talk more about how to do that in the group settings and group structures, building essentially the foundation, the clinical knowledge. But I want to talk mainly about packages, pricing, and memberships. So, remember when I said earlier that medicine was having to evolve? And one of the things that I started to realize is that it's not just the clinical medicine, but it's all the structures around it that were based on acute care. And fee-for-service is one of the things that goes under the radar for me, of something that is really designed for fee-for-service, for acute care, and needs to adapt for this new environment. So, fee-for-service makes a lot of sense if you're an acute disease. You get an infection, the doctor's the only one that can help you. You go into the doctor and you have a transaction with them where they determine what's going on, they give you a solution, and that's the end of the relationship. And it makes sense to see the doctor first, and it makes sense for you to pay them once, because it's a one-time interaction. You take the pill and you go away. Does that make sense when you're talking about reversing type 2 diabetes? I don't think it does. And the reason why I don't think it does is because you're not going to reverse your type 2 diabetes in one appointment. And if your expectations are that you are, which is kind of setting it up with fee-for-service, and then it doesn't work, right? Who does it fall back on as like, oh, this was not a good plan? It's the doctor and it's the clinic, because ultimately they're the ones who are setting the rules of how you engage with the practice. And so, like Robin, who runs Parsley Health, tells me all the time, people try in and get a one-off appointment to go and see her. And she's like, no, even at the beginning when she didn't have that many patients, no, you have to be a member. You have to be a member. Why? Because I can only create health over a period of time. We can co-create health together over a period of time. So, what is the answer to this? So one of the answers has to be, so another example I just want to give on this, and I share this a lot, and this Tom Blue sort of gave me this idea where we all have an idea of what it's like to interact with a professional that charges on an hourly basis, because we all have a lawyer, and lawyers suck. And it's annoying we all have a really good idea of how we want to interact with a lawyer, which is as little as possible that's the plan, right? You know that you're being charged by the minute. And so you know that if you don't want to ask one more open-ended question on a phone call with a lawyer in case they spend 10 minutes, going off, because that cost me another $60 just to listen to his answer that I didn't really care about. You're caught, you're short. So if you're charging fee for service and that's the way you structure, just know that that's the environment that you've set up. You may not have chosen to do it that way, and you may not think of it like that way, but it doesn't matter what you think, because you're not designing the process around you, you're designing around the patient, because this is patient-centered care. So think about the environment that you're creating. And if you're creating an environment where the incentive is to get out of the care with you because they want to not have to pay you any more money, who's had patients here who have too early come out of the care plan that you have for them because they felt a little bit better, only to realize that they haven't got the full potential of what you could have offered them because they didn't stay the course for the extra month that would have got them to a point where they could have had an extra X of lifespan, right? We've all had that kind of situation. So we need to look at what are some pricing structures that are more congruent with the kinds of diseases that we're seeing. And I think the two things that we have to look at is packages and a direct primary care model. So a membership model. So packages and pricing, just look at the way things are evolving in the value-based care system, right? In the value-based care is that there's a structure that's being created where it's going to be an episode of care in value-based care. So, the reason why we talk about value-based care is not just because it's some concept that I came up with, is that health systems are reorganizing because they're realizing that if they pay you 20 times more to do a heart stent than to have a conversation about diet with a patient, you're going to incentivize a hell of a lot of heart stents, and you're not going to incentivize any conversation about diet. And so that's come to a point where it's like, oh, we need to do something about this, because guess what? We set up an environment of pricing, same kind of thing, but for doctors, where they were so incentivized to do tons of procedures that they did tons of procedures. And that went in that way, so we've got to set the right environment. So now in value-based care, it's like, I'm not going to give you $1,500 every time you do a stent. I'm going to give you $5,000, and you've got to keep this patient well for 3 years. And you work out what to do with that $5,000. That's more the direction that it's going. So you're going to give you a chunk of money and go. So look at like Dean Ornish's program for heart reversal. That's the integrated medicine. Dean has been on the cutting edge for 30 years, right? Getting it clinically validated and then getting it into Medicare in America. So now you get $7,200 for 9 weeks of care, and that's from Medicare. You probably get more if you're going through the commercial insurers, and that's for 6 different types of providers, including like the yoga teacher and the mindfulness meditation and the nurse case manager and all this kind of thing. The doctor's only doing 2 hours of that care, but the insurance company is happy to pay because they've proven that $7,500 worth of care in that way actually leads to, all those people after that 9-week process can take care of themselves. They know how to not get heart disease in the future, and they've learned that in a process. There's a quote that I want to put up here that I forgot, but I normally put it it might be somewhere else in the presentation. But it's like, if you're trying to build a driving school, don't model it on a body repair shop, right? Those are 2 different things, right? If you're trying to teach people how to drive, it's going to look different than a body repair shop. Now, this is the evolution of medicine. We've had all these body repair shops, and we see that we want to create the driving school, but we're trying to adapt the body repair shop, and it's clearly not the structure for a driving school. So think about that. But I want to talk a little bit about memberships here, because I think that there's 2 things that happen with a membership. Well, there's many things that happen with a membership, but 3 things that I think are good for us all to think about here. 1, you can create access in a way that you can't create access with a fee-for-service model, because you can defer the money that you get from patients to a time when they're feeling better and they're happy to share the money with you. I think everyone's heard of the idea of the Chinese medicine clinic, right? Where you pay every month and you pay when you're well, and when you get sick you don't pay. I think intuitively we all think, oh, that's kind of cool, right? That kind of makes sense because the incentives would work. Direct primary care or a membership-based practice is like that, in that you don't pay any more when you get sick. You pay the same amount every month. And the reason why I think it's good is, 1, you can increase access, so you can have a lower monthly payment. 2, and this is the biggest thing, you can create a asset that you can sell. I've heard from people in Australia that Australia has exactly the same problem in America, in that most providers don't have a retirement plan. Is that accurate? Everyone's got their plan? No, definitely not, right? I've been privy to some negotiations over time where the one doctor wants to sell their practice to the new doctor, and it goes like this. So yeah, here's the practice, this is all the stuff, I've got this table, this is worth this, whatever, and look, here are my 3,000 patient files. So, 3,000 patient files, I think they've probably spent on average, $2,000 in the clinic, so that was been $6 million worth of revenue over the next, over the last 6 years. So, that's probably worth about $6 million in the next 6 years, so just give me $6 million for the practice. And they'll be like, no, hell no. Who are all these people? Where are they? This person, has she moved out of town? Has she died? Do you know? Do you have any idea? No, you have no idea. Because that's the thing. One of the things in medicine that's been a problem, no one's tracking the outcomes. You give the person the drug, did they die? Did they get better? Did they move out of state? You have no idea. And you can't put any value on these files because the incoming person is like, I don't know what that is. That's just a bunch of paper. Compare that conversation to this conversation where it's like, hey, I've got 500 members, they pay me $100 a month, that's $50,000 a month, that's $600,000 a year, and I think if we do the transition right, we can keep 85% of those members with the patient. So that's going to be $600,000 a year, go down a bit, but we're already adding X number of people in. So, over the next 5 years, that's a predictable $3 million. So $3 million, I'll take $3 million for practice. Okay. That would happen. And the reason why that would happen is because when you buy a business, you're buying predictable future cash flow. There's no predictable future cash flow in a fee-for-service model. A membership model is what it's all about. That's why all the businesses are moving towards a membership model in their business, because predictable future cash flow shows you where the value of the business is. So, if you are starting now and thinking about your business plan, you may want to have the model for the future where you get people. The problem is with the membership model, and that's why we put together the class on it, is that functional medicine, integrated medicine is quite time intensive early on. And so you can really mess up your model by committing to too many hours per patient on the front side and running out of time. And what we started to see when we were going with practitioners who were creating their model and just like envisioning what they'd like it to be, they would, create a model that they thought was the right price, and then they would put it all into the spreadsheet and realize that at no point, at 100 members, 200 members, 500 members, or 1,000 members, at no point did the model work, right? When they only had a few members, they weren't making money, but by the time they got to 500 members, they were doing 2,500 hours of consults a year, and that didn't make sense. So you really have to think clearly about this, and what I think is one of the emerging ideas is maybe that you could do a package at the beginning where you're doing the time intensive when people sign up for the high touch services and come into what typically most of you are doing in practice right now. And we're going to talk about what to preamble that with so that you can add as many value, you can add tons of value before they get to that point where they have to stick down the credit card for the big chunk. That you can do that up front, and then you can graduate into a lower cost model when you're healthy, when you've got your, whatever numbers into alignment with where you need to be, and you're not going to be that big of a time suck for the patient, for the practice. So really think about this. Think about doing it. I think that there's lots of different ways to do it, but I think that innovation in the membership space, because again, if we're talking about community, people know what it's like to be a member of something. They understand, they can rationalize what a membership is. On the next functional forum on the 4th of April from the Royal Society of Medicine, Dr. Heba El-Nazer will be there. She's built a direct primary care functional medicine practice in Cairo, in Egypt. The first iteration of her practice was like a yoga juice thing, and Cairo's not ready for yoga and juice yet. But Cairo is ready for a membership functional medicine practice because they got no primary care network. So like she built it, she got all these members, and then these investors were like, oh, this could be like you could just have 100 of these and have a primary care network. Exactly. So think about that, and I think this is a really important conversation to have, because it sets up either the right environment or the wrong environment mentally for patients to integrate with it. All right, the second area that we're going to talk about here is building your team. So one of the things that we've seen all the way through is that I could tell, like when I went from running that practice to being a sales rep, I could walk into practices and I could tell straight away whether anyone there liked their job. There's just an energy that you can feel when you walk into businesses of any sort to see whether people like it. I don't know if anyone's been to, has anyone been to Dubai here? In Dubai, they make, in some of the restaurants, they make people wear t-shirts saying like, I'm having a great time. Have you seen that? So like, it's like forced, I'm having a great time, I love working in steers or whatever it happens to be in that, but they force it, but you can tell. And so what I've seen with these most clinics is that there's a mission, the practice has a mission, the practitioner sets up a mission or the vision for the practice. That vision can be crowdsourced by the early people as part of the team. We did that at the Evolution of Medicine. When we had 5 employees, we crowdsourced what the Evolution of Medicine was to us, and we ended up coming up with a 10 document. We evolve, and it's on our website, and it's all the things that we stand for. And we go back to it every year to see if there are things that we want to change or things that we want to adapt or new ways that we're thinking about it. But having some sort of like mission and buy-in that the clinic stands for, and then having continual opportunities for continual learning so that the employees feel like they're part of the team and learning and developing from there. There's another favorite quote: life did not take over the globe by combat, but by networking. Integrative and functional medicine did not take over medicine by combat, because we got worse weapons and we got less people, but we can out-network them. And that's why we started the Functional Forum, meetup groups to be able to, build the kind of community together. But the next thing I want to talk about here is, building your local community. And what we're going to talk about today is a structure whereby you can put on these kind of events, education events in the community at really low cost, in some cases 0 cost, and you can start to build this community around your practice so that, you will never be short of new patients because you built the healthy community. And that's what we were, just talking about in the break, is what are some things that you can do in your practice to be able to, one, engage with communities that already exist, right? When you're working out, if you want to learn to give a talk that fills your practice, there are strategies, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, of ways to fill a room consistently with people that might be interested in your practice, and then give a talk and then convert those people into being patients. Now, the reason what you want to do at the beginning is you want to practice giving that talk a lot of times to where there already are groups. So we're going to talk about that. But I also want to make sure that all of you understand that a big part about playing this role is thinking about how you're going to position yourself with the community. Because if you're just positioning yourself as a business in the community that wants to hoover up as much cash from the community as possible, that will become evident in the way that you communicate and the way that you deliver. But I would say that, what I've seen from most practices, if there's an activist inside you where you really care about community health, or you really care about the future of medicine, let that activist step forward into the community, because people resonate with that, and they resonate with someone who's trying to do something about a problem that we all share. And that in that way, it's sort of less, it's easier to get people on your team. One of the things I love about America, and I have a feeling that it's not like this here, there's just this desire to help people who are on a mission. I think we have, that's why I don't live in the UK, honestly, because I think they have it the same thing here. It's like, fuck your mission. you know what I mean? It is kind of like that. I don't know if you call that tall poppy syndrome or whatever, but it's there's just a general kind of malaise, a general kind of I don't care, a general kind of what would you call it? Yeah, it's so that's why I love being in America, because I don't think the functional forum could like happen anywhere else as a starting point to get the momentum. People are like, oh, this is cool, the meetups and whatever, and they're doing it, and yeah, he seems confident and it's working and whatever. And so, you know, that may be something that is specific, but you'd have to America. But I can see that it is a good plan. The business community, again, this may be a little bit Americanized, but I would just think about if your practice offered better value than medicine, who would you be able to offer that value to? And I think that one of the things that, you know, you in the business world, you could get into like the peak performance CEOs. Maybe that's not the medicine for everyone that you really want to develop. But there are interesting possibilities in this space to create value for other players outside of just the patients that you work with. So I want to do a little bit of a thing here with all of us. So I want you all to get out a piece of paper, because we're actually going to do a little bit of work now rather than just this listening. And I want to go through a half an hour process with you where we're going to help you just define who the ideal patient is for your practice and where to find them. Because ultimately what I felt that is that we need to have a structure to consistently introduce ourselves to our best, you know, to the patients that we can help the most. So, is who's your ideal patient? What needs do they have that are currently underserved? Where do they hang out? In person, virtually, and how many are these people locally? So we're going to do this at a few way round. Now the process that we're going to do we're going to talk a little bit about niching or niching here, and you know, another thing that's interesting about the Blue Zones is this concept of ikigai, which is purpose. And I think that what I've seen is when practices find their purpose. Look at someone like Terry Walls, right? Here's a woman who had no idea what her purpose was, got MS, reversed it, and now it's crystal clear. And if you spend any time with Terry Walls, she is unstoppable, because she knows exactly what she's here to do, and she's not going to stop it until she's done it. And we're really excited to work with her, because she's unpacking for us in our Practice Accelerator, you know, exactly what it's taken to facilitate groups of people reversing their MS together. And if that doesn't fill you with excitement, you know, that is a really big moment for humanity when that's possible. So she's in the zone. She loves it. The world definitely needs it. She can get paid to do it, and she's good at it. So I know that for all of you, like, the one thing about this medicine, whatever you want to call it, is that most people who find themselves in it have some sort of like story that got them there. And I'm going to ask you to tell that story a lot, because a community is a group of people bound together by gifts and stories. You know, you need to start telling that story, because that story can be very empowering for anyone who hears it, who's particularly if they've had the same issue as you. So who can you be of the most service? Who can you tell a truly compelling story to? Now, one of the things that is a problem is that people, like functional medicine, can help anyone with a range of diseases. There's a range of diseases that one can help with if you're good at building function or you're good at reducing inflammation, because there's a lot of chronic diseases that are built on inflammation and built on dysfunction. And so functional medicine and niches are unlikely bedfellows, but you have to try and like pick a group of people. Now that doesn't mean that you're not going to treat the other people. It doesn't mean that you're not going to attract other people through this, but you need to have crystal clear messaging to get to the first group of people so that you can find them where they are in the community, engage them, get them into an opportunity to have transformational community experience with you, and then use that. One of the things I was talking to in the break, why I'm so when I was in sales, my mentor taught me that, like, essentially when you're in sales, this is what's happening. The patient has their big stack of dollars, and if we're going in for cashier, they've got their big stack of dollars here, and your value is down here. Your value's down here because they haven't heard of you. Now, if they get a referral, why is it way easier to sell people in your practice if you get a referral? Because they trust the person that's giving you a referral, and that your value has gone up, because in their estimation it's gone up. And as soon as it goes above the money, then they buy. So what are we going to talk about here and all today is how do you set up a structure where you can increase your value at very little cost to them so that you can get above above their big stack of dollars and they'll buy. And you can do that in a predictable way that doesn't take all of your time, that uses technology, that has automation built into it, that you're doing consistently so that you can consistently get in front of groups of people in your community, and you can sell people into coming in your practice. Because here's the thing. The reason why, just to go back to my last point about community, the reason why integrative medicine has to do this is because in a certain way you guys have the most incentive to do it, right? There's no incentive for people who sell hospital beds or rent hospital beds or sell pharmaceuticals to solve that problem, because they're putting themselves out of business. You guys are putting yourself in business and keeping yourself in business by creating these communities where the patient flow comes to you. So if you think about it, there are very few other people that have an incentive to create cost-sharing communities, but you guys do, because if you are the person that creates that community and you create the value at no cost for everyone, you're going to be the only person that they're going to want to engage with. You know, like I was saying in the break, Joel Kahn, who's in the last functional forum with his plant-based nutrition support group, got one guy well. He went plant-based, reduced his heart dysfunction before he got to heart disease, is well, knows how to keep himself well. When I went to Detroit and I met him and I met the other guys in his group, I would categorize them as a bunch of lonely dudes. And yet this group that they had come together with was now facilitating a new kind of interaction for them, where they were able to connect about their shared, fear about getting heart disease and fear about leaving their kids without a dad, and empowering them about cooking together and learning to eat vegan in that situation. So there was a structure that was created. Now Joel Kahn will never run out of patients because he's got a plant-based nutrition support group of 3,500 people that he helped to create, and all those people love him because he's created a structure where they can have a peer-to-peer community support about their fears, their concerns, and making it happen. So in the medium term, you want your patient base to be made up of these right people. So last year, Tom Blue is, for 15 years, is someone in the concierge, direct primary care medicine space, knows this work very well. Last year, we put on a 2-day workshop about how to build a functional medicine membership-based practice. And he took us through this process called the Lean Canvas. And the Lean Canvas is pretty much, I'm going to call it a patient acquisition plan because it sounds sexy. So we're going to do our patient acquisition plan here right now in the next half an hour. And it's the easiest and quickest way to get absolute clarity on the target market, the advantages you have, and how to communicate that. So let's start. So this is basically what the Lean Canvas things look like. You don't need to have this. All I'm going to say is that there's going to be 9 things that we're going to go through, and we're going to go through each of them in order. And it's going to take half an hour, and at the end of it, you're going to have real clarity as to how to find these people. So this is the example that Tom did. So the first thing that we want to do, is get into customer segments. So in his practice, he identified that there were 4 major segments that they wanted to work with: athletes, families, executive, and clinically complex people. Right? And so what I want you to do is to think about these customer segments, think about one, and then pick one. And then just take that one, and we're going to do the whole thing around that one. You can come back and do this for athletes, because athletes are going to be found. You're going to find athletes in a different place that you're going to find clinically complex people. And you're going to give different messaging to them. So what I want you to do, first of all, is just to think about the one group in the community that now, I can send you guys all these slides if you want. It's fine. You don't need to get ultra low res stuff. Yeah, exactly. And you're going to get it. Are we going to send the video everyone to this as well? Yeah, so you paid, you got the video, so you don't have to take pictures of everything. Just relax into it. You're in a community, it's fine. So think about here, who's that customer segment? Is it a disease category? Is it a person? What a person? And if you get halfway through this and you think, I wish I'd done a different one, don't worry. You can do it another time. It doesn't take that long. It's just the process of thinking it through. Okay, so just take a minute and write down who is the customer segment that you think that you're able to, to solve. All right. So brainstorm a few, focus on one, and then we're going to complete a full Lean Canvas for each segment. Okay, 2. So now you've got this person. Part 2 is, what is the problem that they have? and how do they talk about that problem? What words do they use to describe it? So this is typically easy because a lean canvas process is not a medical thing. There's a lot of businesses that do this. The cool thing about this is that it's actually super easy to do because it's typically just their diagnosis, right? Everyone's still caught on the diagnosis. You don't see a lot of people saying, my X function is down in the way that you would think about it. They just say, I've got type 2 diabetes, I've got heart disease, I've got rheumatoid arthritis, right? So what is the problem that they have? How do they talk about that problem, and what are the words that they use to describe it? This is easy in our space because it's probably going to be a disease category, but if it was the clinically complex people from the beginning, it may be that, like, I've got a lot of disease, I've got a lot of symptoms, it's all, there's a lot of things going on, the doctors don't really understand it, whatever that might be. Okay, so take a second, communicate the problem, and particularly the words that they use, because you want to use their words in your communication. Okay, so 3 is the unique value proposition. What is unique about your offering to that problem? So you may have clinical unique value propositions, like the training that you've done, the modalities that you have in the practice, the supplements that you carry, the providers that you have on the team, and I would say also the experience. Like if you have a real experience, if you are Terry Walls and you reversed your MS, a clinical UVP is that you've done it on yourself, right? And that's a huge moment for everyone when a patient, one of the reasons why, and we're going to talk about groups this afternoon, one of the reasons why the group visit works so well is because patients get more value from hearing from a patient who's reversed it than from you telling them if you haven't done it, right? They don't necessarily believe you, but the person that's sitting across from them that said, I used to have type 2 diabetes and now I don't, they're like, well, how did you do it? Oh, you just do this and this. That's exactly what you told them to do, but now they're really listening because it's real. So I'll just go back to this just to show you what we came up with when we did this. So he had the customer segments, clinically complex. The problems were continued poor health, failed by conventional intervention, escalating medical expenses, strained MD relationship. Ring a bell, right? All of these things probably good. What's the unique value proposition? Health restoration, reduced predictable medical costs, that's when we're talking about like the direct primary care practice, achieve performance goal, health literacy, reduce medications. These are all things that he went there. So let's go back to part 3. You could also have these non-clinical UVPs, ease of interaction, use of technology, right? If someone's struggling with a physical ailment and they can see you from home, that's a unique value proposition that you have just because you have a telemedicine platform. Like that's a real value that you want. So when you're going to communicate outwards to these people, these are the kind of things that you're going to talk about why they should come into your practice. 4, what is the solution that you offer? So now we're going to talk, what is the solution that you offer? Do you have just one solution? Is there a solution of just coming to see you as a patient and then there's a predictable train? Is it a group of doctors working together? Is it that they're going to be in a group visit? Is there a high touch, high price point service, which is, I would argue, is like what most people are they just have this, the high price, high touch, right? Integrated medicine only for rich people. I'm sure we've all heard that, right? Very rich, the very green, and the very sick. So most people have this. Do you have a low price point, low touch? I'm going to give a couple of examples a bit later, but in the next functional forum, there's 2 in 2 days. It's an amazing moment. It's going to happen next week. I'm going to be chilling in Byron Bay with these guys, and there's going to be 2 functional forums happening on 2 consecutive days, and I'm not going to be doing anything. I'm going to be hanging out. But in the one in America, there's this doctor that's created this thing called Community on a Cleanse, where she has twice a year, 200 people in an auditorium, and they get a binder, and for $30 a person, they're essentially taken through a massive elimination diet, 200 of them at the same time. And they come in, they pay $30. $30 is available to anyone. You're really making that available to anyone. They get the binder. She's making money by the 200 times $30, $6,000. It probably costs something to put the whole thing on. She has vendors outside because when you teach people about, not interacting as much with environmental toxins, you make different choices about your skincare. You make different choices about your your buying, your cleaning, your water filtration. So she gets all these vendors there, and twice a year sets up a structure where there's a low price, low touch offering. Think about the group visits. We're going to talk about that a bit later. Unleash the power of community. Introduce people who want to be healthy to each other in a scaled, low cost environment. Okay, so what's the solution that you offer? Do you have a range of solutions? Is it one solution? So let's go back to what we had here. What's the solution? Predictable cost model, membership. We get to the root cause. We have advanced diagnostics. Who's doing slightly different lab tests or slightly different interpretation of those lab tests in this room? Most people, right? You're doing that as part of your training. So this is part of your solution, is that you help to get to the cause. You help to uncover that kind of thing. That's the solution that you have there. Okay, 5. What's your unfair advantage? What do you have on your side that gives you an unfair advantage? So this is where it's coming to your ikigai. Is it your story? Is it your training? Is it experience, passion? If you're just starting your practice at the beginning, you're probably going to be passion heavy and experience light, and that's fine. People want to be with passionate people who do anything to help them get better, right? Is it going to be, is it going to be your story? What is it that separates you from another provider who's doing something very similar? You want to think about people. Now, this might be the session where you go, oh, I should have done a different segment at the beginning. That's fine. But just know that this is going to be an important part of your messaging when you're starting to message outwards. So what's your unfair advantage? Take a moment. I know I'm going fast, but I know that over time this is a process that you can go through again and again. What I've seen, just to give you an idea of what this looks like when you've gone through this process. We've got clinics that have 4 different key patient bases that they're aiming for at any one time, and they are consistently creating ways to get to those people in the community in 4 different specific ways, and they bring in patients from all across 4. The course that they end up delivering is pretty much the same, but they're going to find heart disease patients where they know they'll find heart disease patients, and they have different messaging for each of the different patients. Then ultimately people come into the same platform because it's functional medicine. Revenue streams. So what are the revenue streams that you generate from people when they come in? Appointment fees is probably an easy one. The package or the membership, these will be thing. Do you make money from supplements? Do you make money from other modalities? Do you make money from education events? Do you make money from group events? Do you make money from corporate? What is going to be the revenue stream that you create as a result of these people? So here, revenue stream bottom right, monthly membership fees, nutritional supplements, bundled programs. So you need to be clear about where the money is going to come from, and where you feel confident in making money and where you don't, and where it's going to be part of your thing. Like, I think Robin with Parsley Health, she has a 20% discount on supplements by being a member. So that feels good of being a member, but she's making 40%. So, there's still money that's being made, but it's like she can talk about how members get a discount on supplements, and it's a value add in that way. Some people, I've seen more and more practices now who, talk about being the arbiter and being the honest person in the community and really building the trust. They give the supplements almost at cost to the patient for being part of their membership and practice, because they don't want to misalign the value proposition of where the value is actually coming from, right? If the value is coming from the time with me, but then you have some practices that are including in their packages education. They're including, $1,000 training program in education that, is basically a school on how to keep yourself well, that's delivered through, something basically more like this, like Victus, where it's a pre-organized, systematized way of educating people. Dr. Sachin Patel, smart guy, one of the smartest guys, in thinking exactly in this way, he does a thing called the 30 and 30. So all he's done is he's taken his best 30 tips that he would tell any person who wanted to keep themselves well, put it into an email sequence, and he gets people to, if you give me your email, I'm going to give you 30 tips in 30 days on how to keep yourself well. And, he can deliver that. So that's a value proposition that he gives that you opt in for with the email, and we'll talk about this a bit later. But over 30 days, every day you get a health tip. Now, all of you guys have like 100 things in your head. If you can't think of 30, you're not in the right profession. You got 30 things. So think about the things that every one of your patients would need to know. And, he's even monetizing it. So like, okay, one of the things that he wants everyone to know is that you have better bowel movements when you're in a squat position than when you're seated on the loo, on the dunny, right? Is that what you say over here? Dunny? Oh, I just make that up. I haven't watched Neighbours in too long. So that's one thing. So he sells the squatty potty. He sells that. He takes them to the Amazon link and he's getting his 5%. Because he's like, look, if people realize this, they buy the squatty potty, why not? You're making money off that, but you're introducing people to the concept that they've been pooping wrong their whole lives and they didn't know it, right? But that's a new piece of information that's valuable. That might come up in some weird conversation in one of your hour-long sessions, but it might not. But isn't it cool for everyone to know that? And then there's value that you're adding. No cost, improve outcomes, high value. No cost. He's got the maths in his head and he's thinking from that point. So he's like, how can I give everyone in my clinic this extra value and build up my value proposition to get people to give me the money because they see how much value we get in this practice. Cost structure. So this is going to be, what is the overhead that you have to hit? Physical space, personnel, insurance, technology, and practice tool. It's typically in this order. This is the most expensive, then this, maybe personnel hire, depending on, what kind of physical space and how many team you have. Insurance, super annoying. I don't know if it's the same thing here, but like if you go from doing regular medicine to integrated medicine or functional medicine, you have to pay more, even though you're doing like less invasive stuff, you're seeing fewer people, but I don't know what it's like here, but insurance is kind of a pain in the ass. Technology and practice tools, typically, I've seen so many people complain about the price of a technology when at the moment a personnel who they're paying like 20 times as much is doing it really badly, right? And you say, oh yeah, you could do this. We're going to talk about Victus later, but technologies typically, if you divide it by the number of people that are using it, you see that it's costing almost nothing and way less than some physical person that you're paying to do it. And then per interaction. So this is the overhead cost, and then per interaction. What is your new cost of new patient acquisition? And then, what commissions are you paying? This is an important number. We're going to talk about this clearly here because the cost of new patient acquisition is a real cost if you're working in a cash practice. And if you don't know this, or if you just don't think that this has to be a thing, that's not marketing. No other business in the world doesn't have a marketing budget and expects people just to show up. In America, you've got $6 billion worth of advertising on TV saying, ask your doctor if Paxil might be right for you, right? You've got literally, if you watch the news, 70% of the news advertising budget is by pharmaceutical companies. And I think there's only 2 countries in the world, America and New Zealand, right? Have we got any New Zealanders in here? This is the Australasian group, right? Okay, cool. So yeah, just as wacky as America, they got ads on TV too. But you really need to know your cost of patient acquisition so that you can work out, how you're spending it. Okay, key metrics, KPIs. What are going to be the key metrics that you're going to keep track of during your process? So let's go back to the original one that Tom put together here. What were the key KPIs? How many memberships? How many leads? Percentage utilization and attrition. How many people are dropping off? How many people are showing up? What's the utilization? What are the number of leads? So this is something you're going to have to think about in this process too, is what are these KPIs that you're going to keep look at. What you want to set up is a situation where you have a dashboard of the most important information coming at you every week, so you know how the business is doing. So number of new appointments might be a good one. The rebooking percentage, this was huge in the practice that I worked at. We had the system down that when the practitioner, whether they were doing a naturopathic consult or whether they were doing a massage or a facial, we had the system down so that we knew that we would rebook 80% of people, and it was about the handoff, and it was about asking the right questions. And so it was a team effort to make sure that we were being truly empathetic with the person and weren't giving them an opportunity to worm themselves out. Because back then, 12 years ago, we didn't have DPC either. We were doing fee-for-service. And so we had to, work hard and do the right things and train the staff to make sure that we were saying, okay, asking alternate choice questions. Dr. Smith says he'd like to see you in 4 weeks. Would you like to do the same time in 4 weeks, or would another day that week work better for you? Rather than, do you want to make an appointment now? No? Okay. Well, call us when you can. There's real empathy that needs to be delivered there to get them to play along in the plan. Revenue, Profit, different things. Profit might not be that important at the beginning. Revenue might be the most important. Profit might become more important over time. Cost of new patient acquisition. How much does it cost to fill the event? This is what we're going to talk about here. This is really important, and I want you to focus on this, because if we can get this right, we can build a practice. There's an unlimited potential to the size and the scope and the scale of the practice. All right, and then channels. Where are we going to find these targets? Where do they hang out? So this is a big piece here that I want to talk about is where they hang out. If your target market is pregnancy woman, they might hang out in a different place than a 50-year-old woman. I highly recommend that when you're doing your marketing and looking for patient targets, you focus on women, and that's mainly just because women are smart and they they understand conceptually the ideas of taking care of oneself before it's an emergency. Men can't pull their head out of their ass quick enough for that, generally. But that's the American thing anyway, and I say that as a man. I thought that was going to go across better. I find that this has been seen over cost per acquisition. It's women are more likely to sign up for an education event where they're going to learn about how to take care of themselves. Men, not so much. More likely that you want to try and catch them at the moment when they realize that they haven't, and it's annoying them in some way, and they've got to come and ameliorate that. And then offline, synergistic practitioners, old patient files, and knowing the community. So, I talked about back before, think about where the low-hanging fruit is in the practice. I'd say in the accelerator to practitioners, you should definitely know all the owners of all the CrossFit boxes within driving distance of your practice, right? Because here you have a group of people, think about it, if you're going to build a direct primary care practice and you want to get memberships, these people are already paying a monthly amount to help to deliver their care. They already understand food is medicine. They're already working out. They already see the power of community. This is the low-hanging fruit. Why those people don't have an integrative functional doctor? The only reason I can think of is either that they are so confident in their own ability to keep themselves well because of their empowerment through this process that they don't, that they're there, or they're just, the only downside is they're not going to get a chronic disease, but they're more likely going to put their back out by going for the strongest lift of all time, and so they're going to need more of a body repair shop and not a driving school, and they feel confident in that. But also, they would probably like to know that there are options of providers in their local area that understand what they're doing. And so, knowing your community, think about that low-hanging fruit. Where do people who are interested in these kind of things hang out? Is it at the farmer's market? Is it at local healthy restaurant? Is it at the health food store? These type of things, knowing where these are. So once we have this set up and the channels, now we can get into building the patient acquisition funnel. And we're going to talk about this afternoon, because this is, if you can get this system right, as I said, you have an unlimited opportunity to build a practice. And if this is more random, then you don't. You're going to be fighting it forever. So one of the things, we just launched this new program called the New Patient GPS, and as a thank you for coming, your 300 Australian dollar ticket that you bought here for today is going to be worth 300 US dollars if you want to apply it to being part of the any one of our programs. Particularly, this is our lowest cost one because it's 797. But this process here is essentially, you can build a successful practice ongoing without even having a website, because you're going to take advantage of two websites that already exist that are free, Eventbrite and Facebook. So the reason why I recommend Eventbrite as a way to coordinate your community is because they've got a ton of geeks building epic software for you to use. They are investing in making this a great system. So what I recommend is that you start to create your own page on Eventbrite of community events that you're doing. Most likely, this is going to be put together around a regular group education event. So let's just talk about this. Let's just take one example. So did anyone put autoimmune disease as the people that they're going to go after? No one here? We've seen great results with that in America anyway, where we're going specifically after autoimmune disease. So you're going to put on, and I'm just going to talk you through this, what that looks like, and you can apply it here. So every Saturday until your business is full, because you're a business owner and you care about getting this right, and it's the most important thing to you is that this practice works. You might want to take another day off in the week, because on Saturday at 11 o'clock or at 1 o'clock, you're going to be doing a workshop for the next however long, and it's going to be every week, and it's going to be called The 6 Surprising Causes of Autoimmunity. And we'll talk about this. So you're going to put that in Eventbrite, and you're not just going to have one event this week. You're going to have an event every week or every other week for the next 6 months, right? And you're going to put that in there. Now maybe you have a walking group on a Tuesday night, and maybe you have a gardening group on a Thursday night, and maybe you have some other thing during the week that you do, but you're going to have an Eventbrite page that is fully optimized, that you have a ton of geeks at Eventbrite working out to make all of the interaction work, and you're just going to own a page on Eventbrite which has local events. So here's some reasons why this is a good idea. One, more people in America maybe than Australia, but this is definitely happening. People look on Eventbrite for stuff, right? People, if they Google, Eventbrite gets higher in the search rankings than you ever will, because you don't have 100 geeks working for you. So, if you put James Maskell Sydney into Google, this event comes up, because apart from being quoted erroneously in the Sydney Morning Herald years ago, I have no interaction with Sydney apart from this event that's on Eventbrite. So people are looking for stuff on Eventbrite. So that's a basic bonus. It doesn't matter if people aren't, but some people are, and that's just easy. It's funny, when my COO, who's a doctor but not a real doctor, he's a technologist, when he was showing our practitioners in the GPS how to set this up, he put a digestive workshop on in his town, just showing people how to do. By the next morning, he had 2 people show up, right? And he was like, it's not even a real event. He was just showing us how to do it. So you put your event up. Now, the reason why you want a lot of different events is when you start pushing the Facebook ads to the Eventbrite page, if people can't make it this Saturday, they can make it next Saturday. And if people can't come to your event now, if they don't want to come to the event on Saturday, but they want to come to the walking group, there's another option for there then. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to target Facebook ads, and we're going to push it to the Eventbrite page. Now, the other reason why you want Eventbrite and you want to push to the Eventbrite rather than to your appointment schedule where people can book an appointment is because on Eventbrite, it captures all of the data. Right? It captures all the data. What you want is you want to build this email list of people that are either going to come into the practice now or are going to come to one of your group events or otherwise. If you push to the Eventbrite, if they sign up for something, even if they don't come, you've identified someone in your community who wants what you have, who is in your target market. And you've paid to get them on Facebook ads, so you might as well have their information, because then if they don't show up to the event itself, you can follow that up and you can invite them to another event, or you can invite them to come in for a consult or a group visit or whatever other thing that you want to do. But you capture their data here, so you know this is someone in the area who's interested. We haven't found a way. Now, what I really recommend here is on your Eventbrite capture form, you can put custom fields, ask them for their phone number, because you want to call them up. If they've put in their information that they're interested in one of your events, get their phone number, because you can call them up and invite them to any other thing that you do. So then you're going to run your Facebook ads to the Eventbrite. So Facebook ads is awesome, and it's cheaper now than it's ever going to be. It's only getting more expensive, and it's because only small businesses generally are starting to use it, technology pieces. Once Coca-Cola realizes they can get people with Facebook ads, the price is going to go way up. So at this moment, the price is cheap. So you want to push people to your Eventbrite page. You may even have on your website to push, come to one of my local events, have it in the website, and you can push in that direction. But Facebook ads, you can push, okay, I only want a woman between the ages of 40 and 70 who lives within 25 miles of my practice, who, is interested in these things. Josh Axe, 3 million likes, right? There's a lot of people. Josh Axe is spending a ridiculous amount of money on Facebook ads. And what is he doing for our community? He's helping us identify people that want this kind of care. Does anyone know who Josh Axe is? It's probably for the best. He's annoying. But yeah, he's just a guy who just knows how to do internet marketing. He sold like $50 million worth of strawberry flavored bone broth, right? That's him. But he's got 3 million people that like him. Mind Body Green, Mark Hyman, Terry Walls, like the functional medicine leaders. But then think about who you're actually pushing to. So now if this event is all about autoimmune disease and you're the autoimmune person in your community, the Rheumatoid Arthritis Association of Australia, the rheumatoid, you can think about who are all the groups, what are the things that these people might like on Facebook, and they have to be big things. It has to be things with a lot of traffic, otherwise they don't pop up there. But this, if you nail this and you work out what kind of things people like. They might like your practice, it might be friends of people who like your practice, and you can do that. But if you can think about what are the brands that people like think about all of the B2C supplements that exist in Australia that are big. If they like that brand, chances are they're like in this mindset that they might want that. They might want to come to your local autoimmunity connection because they've done that. So it's going to be different for different people. In our in our GPS program, we have lists for each, for the 5 most common: digestive, heart, stress and hormones, autoimmune. We have listings of like 100 things that you can put in, and then you put it in, you search for them. You only want to do it on Facebook, not Instagram, if you're going after people who are 40 to 70. So this is a really powerful combination here. And what you can start to learn after a while, the cool thing is that you'll be able to know exactly what it costs to fill up your room. So here's the cool thing that happens is, like, let's say you've got one of these events every 2 weeks. You see, okay, this is where you're going to do your room. You got 60 seats in the room. You know that maybe if you call everyone ahead of time and you tell them you're looking forward to seeing them, or you have someone in your office call them ahead of time, maybe 80% are going to show up. So if there's 60 seats, you could sell 70 tickets just to make sure that it's going to be full, because some people don't show up. So you can just turn up the ad spending here. Turn it up. It goes to the Eventbrite page, and people start signing up, and you see, okay, the ads are coming up. Eventbrite starts pushing you higher in their natural search because you're pushing traffic to them consistently, and Eventbrite likes you because you're getting traffic to there consistently. And then, you realize that you're watching it every day, and you say, okay, we've got 5 more people, 10 more people, we've only got a few more people. Okay, now you turn it down. But what you don't do is you don't turn it off. You turn it down to, instead of, you might be spending $10 a day, $20 a day, $50 a day on this advertising. What you don't do is you don't turn it off. You turn it down to 50 cents a day. Because then in 2 more weeks, when you have the event again, you want to turn it up. All the social proof is still sitting there. All the shares, all the likes, all the comments. So you're not starting from scratch, it's doing that. So this is a bit geeky. And I understand that this is probably not in the comfort zone of most people in this room, but there is an opportunity at this moment to have a very predictable way of building your practice around whatever you want. And you're bringing people into a community environment. You're not bringing them into the first appointment where they're just going to see you. You're bringing them into an event where they're going to be like this, and in the break they're going to meet other people. How you do your events, you're going to do some sort of delivery of content, but maybe you're going to have people engage with each other, get into small groups and think. That's a community structure that you've now created where you are using the ads to fill up these groups. Eventbrite has really good reminders. You don't even need a good email system to do the reminders, because they've got email reminders. You can set them to get a reminder the day before, 3 hours before, whatever. You can capture their phone number here so that you can call them. In the event, you've got to give a compelling presentation, but I know that you will. Why? Because you've identified your ikigai, and you've identified your powerful story that you can tell over and over again, no matter what that is. It's about the vision of your practice and who you are. You can tell that story. There's loads of things that patients don't know about function and the body and how it works that you can tell them in this compelling presentation. Deliver value and present the offer. The offer might be a choice of 2 things: high touch, high cost, low touch, low cost. And you've got 2 opportunities. Maybe it's like a group event, or it's just, for most people doing this, that's a new idea from James Maskell. Most people who are doing this, their package that you're selling them into is an appointment with you, a package, a membership, or something where you're making the money. Because obviously what you want to compare is like, oh, I did a talk, I got 5 people who signed up for my program. I realized that the average value that I'm getting from these people is like $1,000. So that's 5 times $1,000 that I'm making, and I only spent $300 to fill up the room. And that's the cost of new patient acquisition that you start to work out. How much did you spend on ads versus how much did you get follow-up? Now, the cool thing about doing it on Eventbrite, people can share this Eventbrite page, they can share it with other friends. You should definitely have something in your events that you do where you get everyone to share the event with you. If you're not going to sign up for the program, I would ask, if you did get value from what I shared with you today about the 6 overleading causes of autoimmunity, if you could just share it on your Facebook page, or share it with 5 people that you know would need to hear this, because I really want to make this kind of information available to everyone. And then the follow-up. So people don't come up, you can send a follow-up to them, you can send a follow-up email. We're going to talk this afternoon, one of the key technologies that we recommend to run a more effective practice is email automation. And so what could you send them? You could say, hey, I'm sorry you didn't make it to my event, whatever, but I've put together a series of 30 emails called 30 Ways in 30 Days, and it's the 30 ways to keep yourself healthy, and I'd love to offer it for you for free. Click here and you can set it up, or I'm going to just put you into it. And guess what? At the end of all of these emails, you've got a link saying, hey, if you want to make an appointment with me, click here, and it's going to an online scheduler. I know that's a lot. I know that's a lot of tech stuff, and I know that if this is the first time that you've had access to this kind of conversation, it might be overwhelming. But I do want to say that this opportunity of this combination of things, and particularly the cost of these ads, is only going up because more people are realizing that you can target people a lot more efficiently on Facebook, for better or worse, than just putting an ad on a billboard, right? In the next year, you could fill your practice or have a massive email list of all the people in your area that are interested in what you're doing, and you could do that for the cheapest that it'll ever be. And it would be wrong for me not to tell you that this is possible, because this is an opportunity to make your dreams come true for the practice in the next year. And so, you know, I just wanted to lay this all out for you. As I said, if you need more details of how to do this and you need someone to take you through how to do it, we have our program, the new Patient GPS program. We'll give you a discount for being here today, and that takes you more through it. But I have a feeling there are people in this audience that are capable of executing this without that, and I want to leave it all out there. So this afternoon, we're going to have 2 more sessions. We're going to talk about integrative teams. So I'm going to talk for a little bit about some of the best practices, and you're going to hear from practitioners who are actually building effective integrated teams right now in Australia. And then we're going to talk about technology, and I'm going to again talk about some of the core technologies that help to make more efficient the least efficient parts of the functional medicine process. We're going to hear from Victus a little bit about how that works. And so again, if you feel like this by right now you don't have some things that you're going to implement, come and see me at lunchtime and let me know where you are, and I'll make sure that by the end of today you have some good next steps. I hope this was useful. I know it was quite dense, but thanks very much. Enjoy lunch.